Welcome to An Actor's Arc. I'm Sean Douglas, and this season I talk with 7 actors in the early leg of their artistic journeys, how they got started, and how they have found their footing. In this episode, I welcome KANG. Hi, KANG. Welcome to An Actor's Arc.
Thank you. Hello. So excited to be here.
Me too, to be talking to you. Listen, I want to start with just like what you are up to now so that people get a sense of where you are in your journey. And in this second season of An Actor's Arc, we're really focusing on actors in the earlier part of their journey in their career and artistic life. So can you give us the moment in time right now? What's going on with you and what have you been working on?
Yes. Today is the second day from being done with our summer production. I have to write, I think, one last paper in order to graduate with my MFA in acting at Northwestern. And from there, I am also trying to audition for professional work in Chicago. And it's a weird crossroads. It's an exciting one, but it's also kind of scary because I am leaving the safety net of school.
And do you have anything on the horizon?
I do. I'm doing The Chinese Lady again in Indiana. I leave for Indiana in September and will be there until about the beginning of November.
So that's a role you did this past year at Timeline Theater in Chicago?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Very fortunate to do so and feel lucky to be able to do it again. But other than that, right now it's all trying to audition and hopefully book other things.
So what you talked about that feeling just a little nerve-wracking.
Yes.
As you make this transition. And I think there's a lot of people who find themselves in that situation as they leave school. And can you describe what those feelings are?
I'm excited to take all the training that I've gotten and try to apply it into the professional world. And at the same time, it feels scary to do that. I feel well equipped, and yet there's still imposter syndrome that I have, and there's still, school was safe. We are very luckily funded and are given resources that I just won't have access to once I'm out. And that's scary.
So having to pay rent
Right.
And find the income to do that, and also to do your artistic work.
Right. Like paying my bills, but also, school was a great laboratory. It was a great way to grow and get better. And, while I want to continue to prioritize that even outside of grad school, there is like a little, I don't know if it's pessimism, but a realistic brain that says, where is the time? Especially if, like most artists, I need a day job to survive. And how do I balance all of these things?
So you said you grew a lot.
Yes.
In your work in grad school. And I wonder if you can put into words the how of that yet, while you're still so close to it.
I actually don't know how I was hired in any acting work before grad school. I think about it and I'm like, why? How did I get work? I feel like in grad school, I learned how to not play state, and to try to do something to somebody all the time. I really learned that it's never about me. It's always about the other person. And I think before grad school, I wasn't even aware of that, which is kind of embarrassing. And now that I'm thinking about it, and also just how to be in call and response with, not only your scene partner, but the audience and the things about you, and having strong relationships with even props that are important to your character. And I just feel like all of that technical knowledge has made me grow, has made me better. I mean, I still need to get better about so many things, but I do feel like grad school gave me a great foundation to continue to build. I was living in the West Coast before coming to Chicago, and a lot of people there speak with vocal fry, and I didn't even know what vocal fry was until.
Can you give us an example?
Oh, it's like the very lack of breath support, and
Great.
I think Kardashians might have popularized it. I don't know, but yeah, until voice teachers here were like, please stop doing that. Like, oh, okay.
That's where you were working first in the Northwest?
Yeah, I had been doing community theater since I was 13 in Texas. And then after graduating from undergrad, I moved to Seattle and stopped acting for about 4 years. And then fell back into it my last few years there before deciding that I really wanted formal training. And Northwestern, I tricked them into letting me in.
There's that imposter syndrome raising its ugly head, right? Tell me more about the shows you got involved with. Where were you in the Northwest?
I was in Seattle, and I was doing really only theater because Seattle's film and camera industry is just not as large. I was doing a lot of what Chicago would consider storefront theater, a lot of new plays. I want to say Asian American specific plays, but I could be making that up. Maybe those are the memories that I just remember the most. But
those are the ones that are on the resume you shared with me.
Yeah, those are probably the ones worth putting on a resume. Not that the others that I was involved with were, of less value. I think the way I don't know if this sounds icky, but the way I've kind of curated my resume is to highlight culturally specific work, because that is the work that is important to me and want to tell people from the very top, at the very beginning, that I've been involved in and would like to continue to be involved in.
So that's interesting. You're thinking in terms of how you present yourself to people that you're auditioning for, that you're being seen by. That's a kind of subtle or not subtle representation of who you are, even in your resume, right?
It took me a long time to accept and embrace who I am. And I'm still trying to accept and embrace lots of parts of who I am. But the one thing that I feel very sure on is my identity as an Asian American. And, even if I am in plays written by Shakespeare or Chekhov, these characters are going to be Asian because I am Asian. And I think that cultural specificity is important to me, whether people can see it or not, or sense it or not. So in, yeah. So I guess on my resume, I think it's important for me to especially highlight the culturally specific shows I've been a part of because they exist and that representation is, slowly being shown. And I think it's important even on a list of things that I've done to show that that work exists. I
Yeah.
don't know if that made any sense.
You made total sense. You made absolute sense.
Great, thank you.
I'm curious though about just something you said in the middle of that about doing a play like Chekhov, one of the classics, what was considered classics in the 20th century,
Right.
and saying you were. Can you clarify what you mean by that? You are going to be Asian in that play. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I've been a part of productions where, because of the lack of conversation and lack of experience, it's some directors in polite ways have asked me to play white, to pretend I have the white experience and play a character that way. And it's a form of erasure that I think actually makes it impossible to work. And I'm not, in my opinion, I think when someone looks at me, they have a pretty good idea that I'm Asian. I don't think I'm like ethnically ambiguous or, anything like that. So, in the classics, it is difficult to find similarities because these characters were written with certain people in mind. I don't think Shakespeare ever imagined that his characters would be played by women or, people of other races and other identities. And so there's, I think, always going to be homework to find the overlap and to make it where to find the point where the character and I meet and fit into a specific production. I think sometimes directors will put a concept on a classical play that, I think help. I think, I don't know if I'm making this up, but I read somewhere that there was a production of Romeo and Juliet done during set in the LA riots. So one family was Black, and I think the other family was Korean. And I think, that concept, while I'm sure can upset purists, I think also does fit in the story of star-crossed lovers and feuding families. And so if I were to be part of that production, I think it would be easier for me to find the similar identity between me and the character while staying true to the intention of Shakespeare. Like I did a production of a show that was set in Victorian England. And now looking back on it, I'm like, I probably should have said no to that. I actually don't think someone who looks like me would have been in the station that my character was in. And, it just, it made there were just so many other things that were going against the realm of possibility that now I'm like, oh, maybe saying no was the right answer. But at the time I thought, I have to pay my bills.
Mm-hmm.
And when will I ever get another opportunity like this?
Right. let's go backward in time,
Okay.
if we may.
Yes, of course.
So before you felt like an imposter, uh,
Uh-huh.
you had an impulse once upon a time to like think I want to be on stage, or maybe you didn't. Maybe someone told you to be on stage. Do you remember what motivated you?
Yes. I remember seeing a production of The King and I.
Ah,
Another, dated story. Sometime early elementary school, I think I saw this production. And I remember looking at the kids and for some vain reason thinking like, I can do that. But there was also almost no theater in where I grew up. So that didn't happen until I think middle school, if not high school, for a few years.
and where were you? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a city called Laredo, Texas, on the border of Mexico and Texas, South Texas. And maybe I just wasn't exposed to it, but I just don't remember there being plays done. I think the first play I saw was this production of King and I. And then the next play I remember seeing was a middle school, like one act production of The Importance of Being Earnest. And then my piano teacher's husband started the local community theater program. And they were doing a production of Fame and needed dancers. And I was dancing at the time. And that was my first play. Fame the musical.
And do you remember what it felt like?
It was fun to be with people my age doing something that I was always interested in doing. If someone told me at that age, I want to be an actor, I would assume that they wanted to be famous, So like saying, if I were to say that, I think I was scared that people would make fun of me for it or like actually just tell me that it's impossible. And so it was exciting to be like, oh, this is a tangible acting experience. Mm-hmm. This is something that's like realistic and that I'm actually doing. So it was a lot of fun. I remember also being at low stakes because I had no lines. I was just dancing, and that was something I had already done before.
Yeah.
But I remember we were blocking a scene and I had my back to the audience, and it was like a full teaching moment. Like he was like, oh, this is very interesting. However, it's not traditionally done. And I was like, oh, wow. I didn't know that. I was like, I'm not saying anything. I thought it would be okay. Like, I'm not like important in the scene. You don't need to see me. But yeah, it made the impulse to act go from something that was impossible to something that was tangible, which I think I have never said out loud until right now, which was nice.
Good. Yeah. And then did you continue to do musicals or plays in high school or?
I did. So every summer, not every summer, but most summers I would do these community theater shows. Mm-hmm. And then in high school, we started doing one act plays. And I was only in, I think, like maybe one or two of them. They only happened once a year, so there wasn't a ton of opportunity. They took a lot of time. So I would be in school until like 10 p.m. and my parents would be like, what are you doing? Like, why aren't you doing other things? I think they liked that I was busy, but didn't love what I was busy doing.
Mm.
But then I also balanced that out with, like debate club, which I wasn't very good at, but I think it gave my parents hope that I would go to law school and only do theater as a hobby.
When you went to college, and you went to college in Texas as well, is that right?
I did. I went to college at UT Austin. I did not get a theater degree. My undergrad is a business administration degree in finance. And if you ask me anything about it, I wouldn't know. I didn't do great. At UT, I believe that only theater students could be in
Mm.
theater shows. And I wasn't. So I was doing like the plays that some of the liberal arts students were producing.
Cool.
We did The Country Wife, and I was in this program called Shakespeare at Winedale. So Shakespeare as well. We did Julius Caesar, and I think those were the only productions that Julius Caesar was the only production I was a part of through that program.
So is there pressure for you from your parents or your own expectations to get a less artistic degree?
I just didn't think it was a possibility to get an artistic degree.
Mm.
Now that I think about it, not that I didn't know, I knew they existed. I just didn't, it was just not in the realm of possibility to do. And UT Austin for in-state students is more affordable than other institutions. And, my parents immigrated here, and I think they wanted and want, I mean, less now, but they wanted me to have a stable life, a stable career, a stable financial life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just never really questioned it. I just thought, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And it wasn't until, and I always wanted to act. I always wanted to be creative, but it felt like a luxury and a risk and completely irresponsible.
What's not to like?
What's not to like about all of those things?
So off you go. You're in Seattle.
Yes.
Did a job take you there?
I interned there in college, and I loved the city. And when I graduated, I didn't want to be in Texas anymore. That's all I really knew. And I didn't have a job in Seattle. I had a couple friends, but not close enough to where, anything was really pulling me there. Because even in college, I was just kind of unaware and not really understanding who I am as a human and what I wanted to, what kind of person I wanted to be, how I wanted to treat others. I think I was just kind of there. And then when I moved to Seattle is when I slowly started thinking about those things and trying to be a human in the world first. And really how to live on my own.
You must have been working day jobs of some kinds.
Yes. So the finance degree did come to good use. I ended up working at a tech company there and, learned a lot, made a lot of good friends, grew up, wasn't acting at all, but was also very unhappy. I was very unhappy, doing the work that I was doing. I didn't think I fit in with the culture
Hmm.
of tech. Ultimately, just was not doing what I wanted to be doing, which was acting, even though at that point it seemed even more of an impossibility, right? It's like at that point, like, what do you even do? I don't know anybody who's doing it anymore. It became even more of like a pipe dream, I think.
Well, I think that's interesting. I mean, even I think theater majors sometimes leave school and they have loans to pay off. They have other obligations they have to meet, right? And then they are at a different point in their lives, and they
Yeah.
have to make a choice uh, about revisiting their
Yeah.
passion or reconnecting with it, um, or finding that something else is drawing them at that point.
Right. Right.
So underneath this, did you know it was acting that you were missing? Did you just feel like there was a hole? What?
I just felt very dissatisfied with my life. And, I think that's also like a state of mind, choosing happiness. But I just felt like there was just a gut feeling of like being a project manager is not what I'm meant to be doing. And it's giving me financial stability. It's giving me like, other benefits that kept me safe and past survival mode. But ultimately, there was just something that would just like, it was just something very like frustrating that I was like, this is not, and I take full responsibility for it. I think, unfortunately, people I would work with could tell that this is not what I wanted to be doing. And therefore, wasn't like living up to potential and living, XYZ. And that added to the frustration of like, well, if it's not this, then what is it? Is it something else? Is it something that I think is actually impossible to do? Or is it, I don't know, do I just need to like marry rich and live life? I don't know. Like, what is the solution?
And so, how did you dare to take those first steps
I
back into the theater?
I must have started Googling or something, just like any sort of theater, anything. And I saw this audition for, I remember it was for a new play called The Lost Girls at Annex Theater. I auditioned for the show, Lost Girls at Annex, thinking, what do I have to lose? I took in the, like, not even like a passport photo, but like an orange photograph that my friend took in like his basement apartment with no lighting.
So that
No,
was your headshot.
yes.
Yeah.
I like, not even a good picture, like a bad picture. And like no resume because I didn't have one. And the director of that play, Caitlin, was casting for a show called A Tale for the Time Being at Book It Repertory Theater, which is storefront to like mid-size in Seattle,
Hmm.
which was Asian specific. And so she said, can you come in and audition for that? And I ended up getting that show and doing that. And after that, I kept day jobbing and doing theater. Then I think maybe in 2018, I want to say, is when I finally left my day job and said, if I'm going to try to do this, it's now. It's now or never.
Mhm.
And then after a year of doing just theater and acting, I was like, I think I really just want formal training. I felt in certain theater experiences that I felt like I was not lacking in some way, but there was just something that like there was vocabulary and techniques and things that people were saying that I just had no idea what they were talking about. And
Mm.
I also wanted something to hold on to when I was acting because I felt like so much, I mean, everything I was doing was very just like instinct and kind of repeatable, like, but maybe not, and I felt like this is unsustainable and I need something, I need anchors and things to hold on to.
You said earlier that when you got to Northwestern's MFA program that you learned a bunch of things like it's about the other person and not about me
Yes.
and some other things. And so what uh if you look back on those performances, if that's possible in Seattle, what do you think you would see?
Oh God. I think I would see someone who's playing state and not action. So I
So
think
when you say state, you mean state of being or
like state of emotion
uh,
instead of trying to do anything to anybody. I think it was just like, this is how I feel, or this is what I think and I'm doing. And it, it was always very internal, I think, even though I was saying words out loud. Um, there were certain actors though who, not that they forced me to be present with them, but something about them would be like, oh, I don't think I had the awareness or the vocabulary to say that, we were in conversation and playing action towards each other. But there were some actors who did make me do that in a way. But then, there
tell me,
were
give me a specific example of someone. Do you remember?
there was a play called John. There is a play called John by Annie Baker that I did at Arts West, and um, there were two actresses, Marianne and Susie, who I just couldn't lie with them. And maybe it's because they were both so good at their job and so patient with me that I felt like, I don't know what it is that I felt like I had to do, but I did feel like everything that I did with them had to be about them. And it was important that it was about them and not about me. And I think in some plays, my need for it to be about me won.
Uh, that's a great way of putting it. That's great. So then you came to Northwestern. So you mentioned the broad takeaways. Were there any specific instances of shows you worked on, moments in class where you're like, oh, no, or was it a slow kind of accumulation
Uh,
of knowledge?
I think my first quarter here was definitely an awakening. Um, my advisor, who I respect and really appreciate, after my first quarter was like, if you're not going to change what you're going to do, then maybe school is not for you. And after that conversation, I was like, oh no. And it just made me, I mean, it was very humbling. And it really like made me like refocus and think about like, why am I in school? I'm not here to just get praise. I'm here to actually get better. And in order to get better, I need to, at the very least, try what my professors are asking me to do. So I think that was like the first big come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
That first quarter, I remember Anna Shapiro in particular telling me that I played state and I didn't understand. Like, I actually did not understand what that meant. And not because she wasn't defining it, but because I just actually was like, what does that even mean? Like, doesn't everybody feel emotion all the time and act on it? You know, like, and I'm like, oh, that's actually not true. Yeah, I think there's a technique called soul work that Dr. Crystal Truscott teaches and has developed in school that I think has been very important to me. It's all about, it actually is about the four big emotions, but using them, fear, anger, joy, and sadness, but using that to like call and then respond. You know, it's a conversation versus just I feel these things and that's it. I think Uta Hagen's, I think it's her 9 questions, but I really only use 5 of like, who am I? Where am I? What do I want? How do I try to get what I want? And what do I do once I do or do not get what I want has been important. I also think there's just so much about speaking on the breath and driving through the end of the sentence and having urgency in what we're doing and just being just totally, just being totally present. And my mantra right now, at least, is like, tomorrow's gone, or I'm sorry, yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not promised. All I have is right now. That's like, I don't know, also helps me just be like completely, and I'm here. What are you doing? How am I responding? What do you want? What do I, that I think all of these things, and I'm sure so many more things that I just can't remember right now is what's going through my mind.
Great.
A lot lately.
Yeah. Yeah. What it feels like now at graduation, entering into the professional world, and what does it feel like it requires of you from a business sense, from a promotion sense, which was very, very different from when I started in the business.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's pressure in that, or what you feel is valuable to be doing, or what do you feel is expected of you to be doing in order to market yourself?
Oh God. I am still learning on how to market myself and even being okay with those words, because it does feel like, this is it might be a pretentious thing to say, but it does feel like almost a prostitution of like my work of like, I need to brand myself. But I like to think of it as like an artistic statement of like, who am I as a creative, or what do I strive for? And I think that's still in development. Right now, I just want to do work that is truthful and grounded and honest. And that's very broad, I've learned. But for now, those are, I think, 3 things that I can really, I don't know, sense. To me, right? Like, I don't think I could do like, not that I don't think I could do it, but I think I would have a hard time being completely truthful and grounded in like a pirate movie, But yeah, like there are other stories that I do feel that way pretty instantly about, or can like find ways to do that. I was very fortunate that I um, found representation while still in school. So I have been able to audition again while I'm still in school, and I still have the safety net,
Mhm.
even though, there are stakes in auditioning, and I do take it very seriously and try my best. You know, not getting one job does not mean I don't pay my bills for the month, which is very privileged, so I'm glad I've gotten those experiences. I've gotten to have some experiences while in school so that when I'm out, it's not just like a whole new
Mhm.
world.
You sidestepped my question about marketing, but I'm going to let it go.
I think marketing myself now, I'm definitely leaning into type.
Mhm.
I think, my first show in Chicago was a play called The Chinese Lady. And I think that's right. I, and not because it's just because of what I look like. I think, that script is amazing, and it gave me so much to do. And it was important for me. And I felt represented and heard and seen through that play, and was very grateful that Timeline programmed it. So if I had my pick, it would be culturally specific shows, and that is how I would market myself as. However, I think representation, that progress is still happening, and
Mhm.
change still takes time. So I think in terms of marketing, God, I don't know. Like for Showcase, it was my goal to do at least one Asian specific monologue or scene written for somebody who looks like me.
Well, this is interesting because you are talking about marketing in terms of an artistic statement, in terms of an artistic uh, mission, a
Yeah.
self mission, even if
Yeah.
that's still being defined for yourself. I
It is.
guess I had in my head things about followers and
Oh.
finding ways to do those things that build a career.
Social media and I don't, that's not something that's on my radar. I don't, um,
Do you think there's a pressure for younger people for it to be on their radar?
if there is, I don't feel that pressure. I,
Good for you.
because I mean, I don't think it's because of like, and I don't know. It's just not something that I have ever been asked about. It's not
Yeah.
something that,
I remember finding it very hard to market myself just because I felt like an imposter as well, or just didn't have a great deal of confidence. And so that part of moving myself forward in the business
yeah,
was painful.
yeah. Marketing to me right now is like I audition and I try my best, and hopefully they call me in for something else later.
Right. If you're imagining, if I guess you've articulated this in some ways, but if you're imagining that arc continuing to rise, even though the journey of most artists is not a beautiful rising arc, there's ups and downs.
Yeah.
But what do you hope for or see for yourself 10 or 20 years from now?
I hope I'm happy, even if I'm doing this or not, even if I'm acting or not. 10 or 20 years is not something I've planned. I've
Sure.
planned, it's not even a plan, but right now I've given myself the next 3 years to really try to hustle and prioritize this. And if I'm able to pay my bills doing this, I would consider that successful. And even if I'm paying half my bills doing this, I would consider that successful. Even if I'm happy doing this, I would consider that successful. But I think ultimately, responsibly for me, if in the next 3 years, I'm actually just, if this career becomes unsustainable for me, then I'll have to make decisions. Even though, like, as much as I do feel like acting and storytelling it's like my calling in life, that can be done not professionally. And I think that's something that I will have to learn to be okay with.
Well, I've seen just a small sample of your work, but my prediction is you're going to be just fine.
Oh, thank you. You're kind. But I also think, like, I don't know. I don't know if talent and skill mean anything. There's so many other factors that I think help shape someone's career and what their paths. And, as much as I would want to work and all of these things, if that doesn't happen, then.
That's right. But when those opportunities do come, it sure is nice to be skillful.
Yes, it helps to be, once the opportunity comes, I have to be ready,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to finish with 3 short questions. The first is one actor, famous, known only to a local community like Seattle or Chicago, whom you admire, and a quick reason why.
Can it be a group of actors that I admire?
Absolutely.
One of the first plays I saw in Chicago was Looking Glass's Steadfast Tin Soldier. And I believe it was a group of 5 actors. And what they did in that play has just continues to stay with me. I think about that show often. I thought it was ensemble based. There were almost no words. And yet the communication and what they were trying to do and what they were trying to tell people with their body and through the story and through the characters was so clear and universal because of its specificity.
What's one thing that just makes you passionate about being on stage or delights you?
It feels like church. I usually have a moment in tech when I'm standing there under the lights and I look up and it just feels, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. I also think when, I am lucky enough to be with another actor who is fully there and present with me and we're in it, I feel like it's the best feeling in the world. It's generous. I think generosity is a job and it's selfless. It's great. And people watching might not get it, but that's okay because I know and that other person knows. I also think like sharing with the audience says a lot. It gives a lot of information. I don't think a play is complete without an audience. And it's always interesting to get that feedback and to get their response and how it can feed our performance and not that it shapes it or changes it drastically or strays from the truth of the story, but it does shift it for the night or, for the day. And I think that's just so great. That's what makes it live, and that's what makes it great. And an experience that will never happen again.
It makes it fun to keep doing night after night, right?
Right.
Yeah. This is the last question.
Yes.
One thing that you want to get better at, learn to do, tick off your list of favorite roles, one thing you want to achieve in your next 3 years that you've given yourself.
Next 3 years. I hope I keep learning. I hope I never stay comfortable. I hope I am always humble and grounded. I hope I find surprises. I don't know what those surprises are, but I hope they come. I hope I find them.
All right, you packed 7 things into that one thing.
Yeah.
So you get a golden star.
Thank you.
Hey, I really appreciate your time today and for sharing both the artistic mission and your point of view on how you want to be in the world of theater and the world of acting and what you have to offer it, and for sharing with me how you got there. I learned a lot.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me and spending your time with me. I hope I was coherent.
This has been An Actor's Arc with special guest me, Kang. An Actor's Arc was created and hosted by me, Sean Douglas. Theme music by Chris Kriz, sound engineering by Grover Hallway. An Actor's Arc Season 2 was made possible by a grant from the alumni of Northwestern University.